Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. Citer, now shut up and listen. The words cut through the bar's ambient noise like a blade through smoke. This isn't some bedtime story. This is the reality I lived through. The storyteller took a long pull from her glass, the Kryptonian ale casting blue shadows across her knuckles. Around them, the bar hummed with the usual mix of freight runners, mercenaries, and people trying to forget which side of the law they'd woken up on. Nobody paid attention to another drunk spinning tales in a corner booth, which was exactly how she wanted it. This was 25 years ago, she continued, her voice dropping to that particular register that made smart people lean in and stupid people lean back. During the fall of the Tyrian Empire, when the universe learned that empires don't collapse, they shatter, and the shrapnel cuts everyone nearby. Citer shifted in his seat, trying to look bored, but his hand had stopped inching toward his weapon. Good. She needed him listening, not thinking. Let me tell you about the night the Bureau of Last Word sent their best killer after a woman who couldn't die in darkness, and what happened when he decided to change the script. The Corvid drones found their rhythm in the storm. 3 wing beats, pause, dive. 3 wing beats, pause, dive. Their metallic feathers sang against the wind, each note calibrated to harmonize with human screaming. Akita Nave had stopped giving them that satisfaction an hour ago. She hung from the rusted arches driven deep into the cliff face, her wrists wrapped in biocables that pulsed with low current. Enough to hurt, not enough to kill. The storm drove walls of seawater against her, salt crystallizing on her emerald skin between waves. Her black hair whipped like torn battle flags. The drone's talons had shredded her cloak to ribbons that now danced in the wind, leaving her back exposed to their methodical attention. Lightning cracked overhead, and in that split second of white light, she saw them clearly. 6 Corvid drones, their AI cores borrowed from Earth's old neural networks, upgraded with Tyrian cruelty protocols. Beautiful in the way that weapons were beautiful, honest in their purpose. Another wave slammed into her, driving salt water down her throat. She spat, tasting copper and brine. The biocables tightened automatically, pulling her arms higher, spreading her weight across screaming shoulders. The position was designed by experts, sustainable agony, the kind that broke people over hours rather than minutes. Still breathing, puppet. The lead Corvid's voice synthesizer crackled with static, almost lost in the storm. The interrogators arrive within the hour. Would you prefer to be conscious or unconscious when they begin? Akita lifted her head, water streaming from her face. I'd prefer you ask better questions. The drone tilted its head, a disturbingly organic gesture. Such as, who's walking up behind you in this storm like he owns it? Kasrevik lit his cigarette with practiced ease, cupping his hand against the wind with the patience of a man who'd learned to smoke in war zones. The small flame illuminated weathered features for a heartbeat, sharp cheekbones, a scar through his left eyebrow, eyes the color of old gunmetal. The kind of face that made smart people reconsider their life choices. He'd walked 2 miles through the storm, his long coat snapping like a wet sail. His boots found purchase on rain-slicked stone with unconscious precision. Water ran off him in sheets, but the cigarette between his lips stayed lit. A small, deliberate miracle that spoke to either extensive training or inhuman stubbornness. The Corvids noticed him when he was 20 feet away. 3 immediately shifted position, forming a defensive triangle. Professional threat assessment executed flawlessly. They recognized him not as a man but as a weapon in human form. Federal Bureau of Last Word, Cass announced, smoke curling from his mouth to mix with the rain. His voice carried despite the storm, not by shouting but through the particular frequency that cut through chaos. Authentication code, Red 77 Tango. The lead corvid processed this for 1.3 seconds. Agent Rivik, we were not informed of Bureau presence. You weren't meant to be. Cass took another drag, studying the woman hanging from the cliff. The red line order burned in his memory. Eliminate the information carrier before interrogation. Target, Verdan female, photosynthetic, black hair. Name, Akita Nave. Timeline, immediate. He'd seen her file. 3 pages of suspected crimes, 2 pages of confirmed kills, half a page of unverified intelligence connections. What the file hadn't mentioned was the way she held herself even now, spine straight despite the torture position, chin lifted like she was sitting on a throne instead of hanging from rusty metal. Are you Akita Nave? His voice cut through rain and wind. She lifted her head, and their eyes met across 20 feet of storm. Salt crystals glittered on her jade skin like broken glass, catching lightning in microprisms. Her lips, split from dehydration, curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. If I say yes, what then, human? Then my name becomes your last word. A laugh escaped her, bitter and bright. How poetic. Take me down first, poet. I always say goodbye better on my own feet. Something shifted in Cass's expression, so subtle the corvid's facial recognition protocols didn't register it. But Akita saw it. That micro-fracture in professional detachment, like watching ice crack over deep water. He knew her. The recognition hit him like a physical blow, though his body language betrayed nothing. Ravel Port, 25 years ago. She'd taken his beacon ship, the Swallow, claimed salvage rights while he was planetside arranging supplies. He'd been young then, still believing the Bureau's promises about justice and order. She'd been magnificent. Stand down, Cass ordered the corvids. I'll handle the termination. The lead drone tilted its head. Local enforcement requested our assistance. Protocol suggests you follow Bureau authority when present. Cass flicked ash into the wind. Or would you like me to file a non-compliance report? The drones exchanged rapid burst transmissions, their decision tree algorithms churning through possibilities. Bureau agents, especially Rivik, had authority that transcended local command structures. Refusing him would trigger investigations, reviews, potential decommissioning. Acknowledged, the lead corvid finally responded. We remain on standby. Cass approached Akita slowly, each step measured. Up close he could see what the storm and torture had hidden, the microscars along her arms from old battles, the way her muscles coiled even in restraint, ready to explode into motion given the slightest opportunity. Her skin, that distinctive verdant jade, shimmed with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with her heartbeat. I know you, she said suddenly, eyes narrowing. Ravel Port, you had a ship. Had being the operative word. I filed legitimate salvage papers. You were 3 days overdue on dock fees. I was in medical. His voice remained neutral, professional. Knife wound, courtesy of your associates. Not my associates. I work alone. She studied his face, searching for something. You've changed, filled out, got mean, got trained. Cass pulled out his modular whistle, chrome and copper, worn smooth from use. The Bureau found me interesting after I lost my ship. Gave me purpose. Gave you a leash. He didn't disagree. Instead, he brought the whistle to his lips and blew, 3 short bursts, 1 long. The sound cut through the storm at a frequency that made the corvids twitch. Their optical sensors flickered, patterns disrupting. Look at me, he commanded Akita. Only at my left eye. Is this a romantic confession? Even facing death, her voice carried that edge of mockery. It's mathematics. Corvid drones process threats through pattern recognition. Steady eye contact from their designated target confuses their priority matrices. He pulled a ferret key from his pocket. Small, innocuous, the kind used for maintenance panels. They're about to mistake what threatens you. Their eyes locked, green meeting gray across 2 feet of rain and possibility. Cass pressed the ferret against her left restraint lock. The Corvid's sensors immediately identified it as an anomaly, metal against metal, potential breach point. Their algorithms, already disrupted by the whistle pattern and the sustained eye contact from their target, reached a decision. They attacked the lock, 12 precise strikes in 4 seconds. The restraint shattered. Akita's left arm dropped free, muscles screaming as blood flow returned. Cass moved to the right lock, repeated the process. The drones obliged with mechanical efficiency, destroying the very thing they were meant to protect. Clever, Akita breathed as the second restraint broke. She dropped to her knees on wet stone, legs shaking but holding. But they'll figure it out in seconds. Seconds are all we need. Cass helped her stand, her body radiating heat against his rain-soaked coat. Even exhausted, even brutalized, she moved with a dancer's economy. No wasted motion, every gesture purposeful. She was exactly as he remembered, and nothing like he remembered, and that contradiction made his chest tight. 3 figures emerged from the storm, local enforcement in rain-slicked cloaks, the kind of cheap authority that got purchased with expensive credits. Their leader, a thick-necked man with augmented eyes that glowed pale blue in the darkness, pointed at Cass. "Agent, you had orders!" Cass took a long drag from his cigarette, then exhaled slowly. In the stormlight, the smoke seemed to form shapes, perhaps a signature, perhaps a farewell. "I did." The Bureau's instructions were clear. Terminate the target. The Bureau's instructions are always clear. Cass flicked the cigarette into the wind. But clarity isn't the same as correct. "You're making a mistake, Revik." The enforcer's hand moved to his weapon. "Stand aside. We'll complete the termination ourselves." "No." The word dropped like a stone into still water. "Now I have something else." "What?" "Mine." The enforcer drew his weapon, a pulse rifle, military grade, the kind that turned bodies into memory. His partners flanked him, creating overlapping fields of fire. Professional, practiced, utterly unprepared for what came next. Cass moved like smoke given purpose. His hand found the enforcer's throat before the man could squeeze the trigger. Not a strike, but a grip, precise pressure on the carotid that dropped consciousness in 3 seconds. The rifle fell. Cass caught it, spun it, drove the stock into the second officer's knee. The crack of breaking bone was lost in thunder. The third officer, smarter, or perhaps just more cowardly, tried to retreat. Cass didn't pursue. Instead, he touched the power coupling on the fallen rifle, sending a feedback surge through the officer's connected combat net. Their equipment shrieked and died. Communications, targeting systems, the heated linings of their cloaks. And the Corvids, their algorithms already scrambled, interpreted this electronic death as a priority threat. They descended on the officers like a biblical plague. Mechanical talons shredded the weather cloaks first, then found flesh. The screaming lasted 8 seconds. The feeding subroutines continued for 30 more. Akita watched this with the detached interest of someone who'd seen enough violence to catalog its varieties. Efficient, but the Bureau won't forgive this. The Bureau doesn't forgive anything. That's what makes them predictable. Cass retrieved one of the fallen officer's comm units, keyed it to local emergency frequency. "This is Agent Revik. 3 officers down at Grid 779. Corvid malfunction. Send recovery team." He crushed the unit before anyone could respond. "That might buy us an hour," Akita said. "More like 40 minutes. Can you run?" She tested her legs, winced, nodded. "I can do whatever's needed. But why? You don't owe me anything. I stole your ship." "You saved my life first." The admission came out flat, matter of fact. "Ravel Port, 25 years ago. But you wouldn't remember." "I remember every face I've kept from death." She studied him, green eyes catching lightning. But you were different then, younger, softer. I was 16. The words hung between them like a bridge across decades. Understanding dawned in her expression, not just recognition but comprehension. The boy she'd pulled from death had become the Bureau's instrument, and now that instrument was cutting its own strings. "Well then," she said, testing a smile that actually reached her eyes, "seems we should have met sooner." "Should have met sooner," he agreed, the words overlapping hers. The storm was breaking, stars beginning to pierce the cloud cover. They stood on the cliff edge, two people who'd just chosen each other over empire, duty, and survival itself. The smart move would be to run immediately. The wise move would be to never have met at all. Instead, Cass shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around Akita's shoulders. The fabric was still warm from his body heat, and she unconsciously leaned into it. "What now, Bureau man?" she asked. "Now you come with me. I'll report you dead. You'll pretend to believe it." "And the truth?" "Truth can wait until morning. I only have tonight. That's enough." They descended the cliff path together, leaving behind the dismembered officers and confused drones. The corvids circled the carnage, their algorithms trying to process what had happened, unable to reconcile their actions with their programming. They would circle until their power cells died, mechanical vultures at a feast they couldn't understand. Behind them, the storm finally broke completely. Stars emerged like punctuation marks in the universe's longest run-on sentence. And somewhere in the Bureau's vast network, alarms were beginning to sound. Not because an agent had gone rogue, but because Cass Revick had finally decided what was his. The path down was treacherous, all wet stone and loose gravel. But Akita's hand found his in the darkness, her skin warm against his palm, and suddenly the footing seemed more certain. They had 40 minutes before the recovery team arrived. 40 minutes before the Bureau understood what had happened. 40 minutes to disappear into the veins of a dying empire. It would be enough. It had to be. The safe house breathed with someone else's life. Mail piled behind the door slot, a dead fern by the window, the persistent hum of a cooling unit that suggested normalcy to anyone listening through the walls. Bureau Safe House #11 was one of 23 such ghosts scattered across Glame Sector, each one a perfect lie. Utility bills paid by algorithms, noise patterns generated to mimic habitation, even rotating datasets that ordered groceries no one would eat. Cass opened it with a fingertip cipher he wasn't supposed to know, a 12-point pattern that would have gotten him court-martialed if anyone realized he'd memorized it during a director's briefing 3 years ago. The lock recognized his biorhythm beneath the pattern and clicked open with the resignation of a secret surrendering. "Cozy," Akita said, water still dripping from her hair onto cracked linoleum. The apartment was barely 40 square meters, a narrow cot against one wall, kitchenette that hadn't seen real cooking in years, single window overlooking an alley where trash collectors never came, all the charm of a morgue drawer. Morgue drawers don't have hot water. Cass locked the door, engaged the noise pattern emitters. Anyone listening would hear a couple arguing about dinner plans, then making up, then watching the news. Standard Tuesday night in any building where people had given up on their dreams. Showers through there. She moved toward it, then stopped. In the apartment's harsh fluorescent light, he could see what the storm had hidden, bruises flowering across her shoulders, a deep gash along her ribs that her photosynthetic healing was struggling to close. She caught him looking and shrugged, the coat he'd given her sliding down to reveal more damage. "The corvids were enthusiastic," she said. "The corvids were doing their job." He opened a cabinet, pulled out a medical kit that looked military grade because it was. "Sit." "I don't need—" "Sit." Not an order. Not quite a request. Something in between that made her eyebrow arch but her body comply. She perched on the cot's edge, the springs groaning beneath her weight. The sound made the apartment feel suddenly smaller, more intimate. Cass knelt beside her, opened the kit with practiced efficiency. Synth skin patches, bone knitters, neural dampeners, tools for bodies that needed to keep functioning regardless of damage. His hands moved with clinical precision until they touched her skin, and then something shifted. The professional distance fractured. "This will sting," he warned, pressing a patch against the gash. "Everything stings." She didn't flinch, but her hand found his shoulder, fingers curling into his shirt. "You still haven't told me why." "Why what?" "Why you're burning your entire life for someone who stole your ship." He finished with the patch, sat back on his heels. The position put him below her eyeline, looking up at her face framed by wet black hair. In the bad light, her green skin seemed to glow from within, bioluminescent patterns pulsing with her heartbeat. "You didn't steal it," he said finally. "You borrowed it. There's a difference." Semantics. Reality. He stood, moved to the kitchenette, needing distance. "The Bureau found me 3 days after you took the swallow. Broken ribs, infected knife wound, about 6 hours from sepsis. They gave me a choice: die in that medical ward or become something useful. And you chose useful. I chose survival. Then I got good at it. Then I got very good at it." He found a bottle in a cupboard, something amber and harsh that the safe house's previous occupant had left behind, poured 2 glasses. "Do you know what they call me in the Bureau?" The last word. Among other things, the closer, the period at the end of the sentence, the man who doesn't miss. He brought her a glass, noticed how their fingers brushed during the handoff. 25 years of being their perfect instrument. Do you know how many people I've removed because someone higher up decided they were inconvenient? "I don't want to know." 47. The number dropped between them like a stone. 47 last words, 47 periods where there could have been commas, and I was proud of it. The precision, the reputation, Cass Revick, the man who makes problems disappear. Akita sipped the harsh liquor, grimaced. What changed? Instead of answering directly, he reached into his shirt and pulled out something that caught the light, a small copper swallow on a leather cord, worn smooth by years of contact with skin. The glass slipped from Akita's fingers. It shattered on the floor, amber liquid spreading like a small sea between them. Neither moved to clean it. "That's not possible," she whispered. "You were 21. Cass's voice had gone soft, careful, like he was handling explosives. "Running supplies between the outer settlements. You docked at Derelict Station 7 for repairs." Akita's hand rose unconsciously to her throat. "How do you—" "I was 15. Had been living in the station's ventilation system for 3 months, stealing food from the supply runners. Except I picked the wrong ship." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your ship. You caught me in your cargo hold, half dead from malnutrition, pockets full of protein bars." The memory unfolded between them in fragments. A skeletal boy backed into a corner trying to look dangerous despite arms like sticks. Akita in an old nightgown she wore for sleeping during long hauls, hair tied back, no makeup, looking at him with curiosity instead of anger. "You're not very good at this," she'd said. "I'm good enough," he'd snarled back, voice cracking mid-threat. "If you were good enough, I wouldn't have caught you." She'd taken him aboard, not out of charity. Akita didn't do charity, but out of something else. Recognition, maybe. She'd been young and alone once too. "You kept me for a month," Cass continued, setting down his own glass untouched. "Fed me. Let me sleep in the cargo hold. Made me fix things to earn my keep." "The boy," Akita breathed. "The quiet one who reorganized my entire navigation system. You taught me to read star charts, real ones, not the automated trash. You said—" Anyone can follow a computer's directions, they said in unison, but only a person can read the space between stars. Silence stretched between them, 25 years collapsing into the width of spilled liquor on worn linoleum. You had careful hands, she said finally. Artist's fingers. I used to watch you work on the nav console and think, this one's going to build beautiful things someday. They taught me to break things instead. No. She stood, stepped over the broken glass, moved close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her skin. They taught you to be precise. There's a difference between precision used for destruction and precision used for... She stopped, her hand rising to touch the copper swallow at his throat. When I left, he said, catching her hand but not pushing it away, you tied this around my neck, said to find my way, then bring it back. You never came back. I tried. 3 months later after the Bureau's initial training, but you were gone. Ship impounded, you sold to Tyrian collectors along with it. Debt slavery, they called it. Legal in that sector. Her breath caught. You looked for me? For 2 years. Then the Bureau made it clear that personal projects were discouraged. So I stopped looking. But I never stopped wearing this. She pulled her hand free, but only to trace the scars along his jaw, marks that hadn't been there when he was 15. That boy, he had a crush on me. He was in love with you. The admission came out flat, matter of fact. The way 15-year-olds love, desperate and absolute and impossible. And now? Now I'm 40. You're 46. We're different people. He caught her hand again, held it against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. But when I saw you on that cliff, all I could think was that I'd been wearing this swallow for 25 years, and you were finally there to take it back. I don't want it back. Her voice had gone husky. I want to know why you really saved me, not the boy's reason, the man's reason. The noise emitters cycled through their pattern. The fake couple was watching news now, occasional commentary, the sound of someone making tea. It should have felt absurd, this manufactured normalcy surrounding them. Instead, it felt like armor against the world outside. Because the Bureau taught me to be perfect, Cass said, how to read 10 moves ahead, calculate every angle, always choose the optimal outcome. But they never taught me what to do when the optimal outcome feels like death. Saving me is death. Your career, your reputation. My career is 47 graves. My reputation is fear dressed up as respect. He released her hand but didn't step back. When I got the order to eliminate you, I thought it would be simple. Another period at the end of another sentence. Then I saw you and realized I'd been writing the wrong story for 25 years. A sound in the hallway. Footsteps. Too deliberate to be residents. Cass moved to the window, checking angles. Akita pulled his coat tighter around herself, the gesture unconsciously protective. Bureau? She asked. Not yet. Local security, probably. Checking buildings in a grid pattern. He turned back to her. We need to move soon. But first, you need to tell me what they really want. Akita sat back on the cot, decision crystallizing in her expression. It's not data I'm protecting. It's a person, a child. Whose child? Does it matter? She's 9 years old and can interface directly with quantum stacks. No hardware, no neural bridge. She touches a system and she's inside it, reading code like you read star charts. Cass went very still. That's impossible. The Bureau doesn't chase impossible things. They chase things that threaten their monopoly on possibility. Akita pulled her legs up, making herself smaller, younger-looking despite the years between then and now. 3 months ago, she accessed a secured server by accident, downloaded 18 years of Black Protocol operations before anyone noticed. Christ. She doesn't understand what she has. To her, it's just patterns, stories without context. But if someone who does understand got access to her, the Bureau falls. Half the Senate gets indicted. The war crimes tribunals would run for decades. Cass moved back to the kitchenette, mind already calculating. Where is she? Safe, hidden in the Undervein network. There are people down there who remember what the Bureau did during the consolidation. They're protecting her. For how long? Until I come back for her. Akita's voice carried an edge of desperation now. She trusts me. I'm the only person she'll come out for. The footsteps in the hallway stopped outside their door. Both of them froze, watching the shadow under the door gap. Cass's hand moved to his weapon, then passed it to the control panel for the noise emitters. He shifted the pattern. Couple having sex now, enthusiastic enough to mask any real sounds they might make. The shadow lingered for 10 seconds, then moved on. We can't stay here, he said unnecessarily. Then we move. Akita stood, water from her hair leaving marks on the cheap pillowcase. You know the Underveins? I know them. Ran operations there before they were abandoned. He paused, studying her. You're trusting me with this. Why? Because you're wearing my swallow. Because you chose a comma over a period. Because... She stopped, then continued with visible effort. Because when I found you in my cargo hold 25 years ago, you could have killed me. 15-year-old kid, desperate, armed with a cutting tool. I turned my back on you a dozen times that first day. You never even thought about it. You don't know that. I do. You had artists' hands, remember? Artists create. They only destroy when someone teaches them to. She moved close again, close enough that he could see the faint luminescent patterns under her skin responding to her emotional state, currently cycling through colors he'd never seen before. The Bureau taught you to destroy. I'm curious what you'll create when you remember how. They left through the maintenance shaft, a tight crawl that forced them to move in single file, bodies pressed against rusted metal that groaned with their weight. Akita went first, Cass following, trying not to notice the way her hips moved in the restricted space, the way her breathing echoed in the enclosed darkness. Stop staring at my ass, she said without turning around. I'm watching for pursuit. Through my ass? It's blocking my view. She laughed, quiet but genuine, the first real laugh he'd heard from her. It transformed the crawl space from a tomb to something else, something that held possibility instead of just escape. They emerged in a service corridor 3 floors down, dust and rust painting them both orange-brown. The Undervein's entrance was another 2 kilometers through the port's abandoned sections, spaces that had been lively once before the Empire's economic collapse made shipping a luxury few could afford. They moved through dead shopping districts past fountains that hadn't seen water in a decade. Their footsteps echoed wrong, too loud, then too soft, the acoustics broken by missing ceiling panels and scattered debris. Cass kept checking corners with professional paranoia, while Akita moved with the confidence of someone who'd run these routes before. You asked why I trust you, she said suddenly, vaulting over a collapsed vending unit. There's another reason. Which is, you're not the only one who looked for someone. She glanced back at him, green skin catching the emergency lighting. After I got free from the Tyrians, and that's a story for another day, I tried to find you. The boy with careful hands who'd reorganized my nav system so beautifully I never had to adjust it again. Cass stopped walking. You looked for me? For 6 months. But you'd already disappeared into the Bureau by then. They're very good at erasing people's pasts. She shrugged, but the gesture carried weight. I kept expecting to see you at ports, grown up, building those beautiful things I'd imagined. Instead, you became the Bureau's knife. Their best knife. Their saddest knife. She touched a wall panel, revealing a hidden access point. A knife that dreams of being a paintbrush. The access shaft led down into darkness that smelled of rust and old water. The Underveins, Ravel Port's circulatory system, abandoned when the population fled but still powered by geothermal taps that would run for centuries. As they descended, Cass found himself studying her movements, not with professional assessment but with something more personal. The way she favored her left leg slightly from an old injury, the unconscious grace in her navigation of tight spaces, the way her bioluminescence pulsed brighter when she was concentrating. "Question," he said as they reached a junction. "In the safe house, when you said the 15-year-old had a crush—" "He used to watch me," she interrupted, not looking back. "When he thought I wasn't paying attention, especially in the mornings, when I'd walk around in that old nightgown. He'd pretend to work on something, but his eyes would follow me." Heat crept up Cass's neck. "You knew?" "I was 21, not blind. Besides, it was sweet, harmless. You were so young, and I was—" She paused at another junction, checking directions against some internal map. "I was trying very hard not to be someone who took advantage of desperate children." "Is that why you kept the distance?" "That's why I kept the rules. Sleep in the cargo hold, work for your food, no touching except medical necessity." She finally looked back at him, expression unreadable in the dim light. "Do you know how hard that was? Having someone look at me like I was saving them when all I was doing was basic decency?" "It wasn't basic to me." "I know. That's why I had to be careful. You would have done anything I asked. That kind of power—" She shook her head. "The Bureau teaches people to use that power. I wanted to teach you that it didn't have to be used." They emerged into a larger tunnel, the main artery of the undervein network. Here, signs of habitation appeared, makeshift shelters, the glow of cook fires, the distant sound of voices. The forgotten people of Ravelport, the ones who'd chosen darkness over whatever the Empire offered in the light. "They know me here," Akita said. "Stay close. Don't make sudden movements. And whatever you do, don't mention the Bureau." "They'll know what I am." "They'll know what you were, what you are now. That's still being written." They'd made it halfway through the inhabited section when the lights went out. Not gradually, not in sections, everything at once like the universe blinking. In the absolute darkness that followed, Cass heard Akita's sharp intake of breath, felt her hand find his arm. "That's not possible," she whispered. "The geothermal EMP pulse directed through the power grid." His voice stayed calm even as his mind raced. "Bureau Special Operations Protocol. They're here." Emergency chemicals cracked to life, handheld lights that painted everything sickly green. In that alien glow, Cass saw them, full strike team, 20 operators in matte black armor that seemed to eat light. And at their center, like a spider in formal dress, stood Director Morse. Agent Revik. Morse's voice carried despite the distance, pitched to that particular frequency that made subordinates' spines straighten. "You've led us quite a chase." "Director." Cass stepped partially in front of Akita, subtle but unmistakable. "I wasn't aware I was being chased." "No?" The 3 dead officers suggested otherwise, as did your creative interpretation of elimination orders. Morse stepped forward, his team flowing around him like water. "But I'm not here to discuss your administrative failures. I'm here to offer you a choice." The Undervein's residents had scattered at the first sign of Bureau presence, decades of survival instinct kicking in, but Cass could feel them watching from shadows, waiting to see how this played out. "I'm listening," he said. "Return with us. Deliver the target as originally ordered. Resume your position with full reinstatement." Morse's smile was thin, surgical. "In fact, I'm prepared to offer you Director of Operations. My job, essentially. I'm retiring soon, and the Bureau needs someone with your particular skills. And if I refuse, then you're a rogue asset who killed 3 officers and fled with a known terrorist." Morse gestured, and his team raised weapons. Not pulse rifles, but something worse. Neural disruptors that would leave them conscious but paralyzed, aware but unable to act. Your reputation dies here. Your connections, your accounts, your entire existence, erased. You become nothing. Cass felt Akita tense beside him, ready to fight despite the odds. 20 operators, all trained, all armed, all with clear shots. The smart play was submission. The survival play was compliance. "There's one thing you're wrong about," Cass said conversationally, as if discussing weather. "Oh, my reputation." He pulled out a cigarette, his last one, and lit it with deliberate slowness. "You think it matters to me. 25 years of being the Bureau's perfect ending, and you think I care about maintaining that fiction. You've always cared about precision, Revik, about being the best. I cared about purpose. You gave me one, but purposes can change." He took a long drag, exhaled smoke that caught the green chemical light. "Here's what you're missing, Director. You see her as a terrorist, a target, a problem to be solved, but she doesn't even remember saving me." "What?" Morse's composure cracked slightly. 25 years ago, she pulled a dying kid out of a ventilation shaft and gave him a month of safety, not because he was useful or important or part of some grand plan, just because she could. Cass dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his heel with finality. "She doesn't even remember that kid's face, but I remember hers. I remember her laughing at my terrible jokes. I remember her teaching me to read star charts in the evening light. I remember thinking that if someone like her could exist, maybe the universe wasn't entirely broken. Touching, but irrelevant." "Is it?" Cass smiled now, the expression sharp enough to cut. "The Bureau taught me everything about endings, Director, but she taught me about commas, about the pause before the next sentence, about continuation despite everything suggesting termination." He felt Akita's hand slip into his, not desperate or grasping but steady, a choice made visible. "I remember the boy," she said, voice carrying the same pitched frequency as Morse's, the tone of someone used to being heard. "Young, desperate, brilliant. I remember thinking he'd either die young or change the world." She looked directly at Morse. "Seems I was right about the second part." The tableau held. 20 weapons pointed at two people whose joined hands said everything about their decision. "Last chance, Revik," Morse said. "The Bureau taught me about punctuation," Cass replied. "Today I choose a comma over a period." Then 3 things happened simultaneously. Cass triggered the emergency beacon he'd lifted from the dead officers, broadcasting officer-down codes on all Bureau frequencies. Akita's bioluminescence flared to maximum, turning her into a green sun that destroyed everyone's low-light vision. The Undervane's forgotten people, who had no love for the Bureau, cut the emergency lights. In the absolute darkness that followed, punctuated only by Akita's fading glow and the chaos of 20 operators trying to re-establish formation, Cass and Akita ran deeper into the veins of the dying port. Behind them, Morse's voice echoed, "Find them! Whatever it takes." But they were already gone, vanished into the labyrinth that had sheltered the unwanted for decades. And for the first time in 25 years, Cass Revik wasn't thinking about endings at all. He was thinking about what came after the comma. The darkness of the Undervanes lasted exactly 53 minutes. Cass counted them, feeling Akita's breathing beside him in the maintenance shaft where they'd hidden, her bioluminescence dimmed to nothing, both of them listening to Bureau boots systematically searching the tunnels below. At minute 54, his encrypted comm vibrated against his ribs, a frequency only 3 people in the Bureau knew he possessed. Morse's voice, tinny but clear. "Parley? Terms?" Cass whispered back. "You come to the command center, alone. We already have her." Akita's hand tightened on his arm. They'd been separated during the chaos. She'd led the Bureau teams deeper while he'd doubled back. A classic misdirection that had apparently failed. "Proof of life," Cass said. A pause. Then Akita's voice, strained but defiant. "They got me at Junction 7. Neural dampeners. Don't come, it's—" The line cut. "1 hour," Morse said. "Plaza Command Center. Come alone, or she dies as a terrorist." The comm went dead. Akita had been captured 30 minutes ago, Cass calculated. Enough time to move her to holding. Not enough to begin real interrogation. He still had cards to play, if he was willing to show his hand. "Go," whispered a voice from the darkness. One of the Undervein's forgotten people, invisible but present. "We'll remember what you chose today." Cass emerged from the tunnels 58 minutes later, walking toward the Bureau's mobile command center with the copper swallow pendant visible at his throat and a data pad heavy in his pocket. 25 years of insurance about to become 25 years of leverage. The Bureau's mobile command center squatted in Ravelport's main plaza like a black metal tumor, all angles and armor, bristling with communication arrays that could reach across sectors. Inside, the air tasted of recycled oxygen and institutional fear. Cass knew the taste well. He'd been the cause of it often enough. Director Morse sat behind a tactical display that painted his face blue with scrolling data. 23 other Bureau personnel filled the space. Analysts, operators, administrators. The kind of people who'd built careers on other people's endings. Cass entered alone, hands visible, weapons surrendered at the door. He moved through the familiar space like smoke through a burning building, inevitable, untouchable, already somewhere else in his mind. "Revik." Morse didn't look up from his display. "I'm surprised you came. You have something of mine." Cass stopped exactly 3 meters from the desk, close enough for conversation, far enough that Morse's security would need 1.3 seconds to reach him. He'd killed people in less time, and everyone in the room knew it. "The terrorist? She's in holding cell 3. Neural dampeners, full spectrum. She won't be interfacing with anything except her own regrets." "Not her." Cass pulled out 2 items, placed them on the tactical display with deliberate precision. The first, his copper swallow pendant, the leather cord coiled like a question mark. The second, a data pad, military encrypted, the kind that would slag itself if anyone but him tried to access it. Morse's eyes flicked to the items, then back to Cass's face. "Sentimental tokens won't—" "Open it." Something in Cass's voice made Morse's hand move before his brain could object. He pressed his thumb to the pad's sensor, and it recognized him. Of course it did. Cass had been collecting biometric data on Bureau leadership for 25 years. The display populated with files. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Operation Blackwater, 14 civilians killed to protect a senator's son from trafficking charges. Project Sandman, neural modification experiments on orphans, looking for candidates like the girl Akita protected. The Virgil Accord, 3 handlers selling imperial defense codes to pirates, with Morse's signature on the approval forms. "This is—" Morse's face had gone the color of old paper. 25 years of insurance. Cass lit a cigarette. Not his last after all. He'd found a pack in the command center's break room because even secret police needed their vices. Every operation that violated imperial law, every handler who sold secrets, every administrator who skimmed funds, every analyst who buried evidence. "You've been spying on us." "I've been documenting reality. There's a difference." Smoke curled toward the recyclers, but not before painting patterns in the air. "The Bureau taught me to be thorough, to always have leverage, to never enter a room without knowing how to burn it down." Morse stood slowly, his hand moving toward the panic button that would flood the space with security. Cass didn't move, didn't even shift his weight. "Press it," he said conversationally. "Bring them all. Let's have a conversation about what happens when this data pad's contents reach the Imperial Senate's Ethics Committee, or better yet, the public news feeds." "You'd be killing yourself too. You're in these files. 47 times. each one with full context: who ordered it, why, what evidence was destroyed afterward. Cass tapped ash into a coffee cup someone had abandoned. The difference is, I was the weapon. You were the ones who chose the targets. Morse's hand hovered over the panic button for 3 seconds. Cass counted them before dropping to his side. Around them, the command center's personnel had gone still, that particular stillness of prey that's realized it's sharing space with a predator. "What do you want?" Morse asked. "The last word protocol, Section 9. Cass quoted from memory, the words flowing like water over stone. "An agent may alter mission parameters if the cost of compliance exceeds the cost of defiance." That's for field operations, not, "This is a field operation. Has been since you sent me to that cliff." Cass moved to the tactical display, called up the relevant regulation with touches that were muscle memory. "The cost of compliance. I kill Akita Knave, maintain my position, continue being your knife. The cost of defiance. You lose one asset but maintain operational security." "You're not just an asset. You're—" Morse stopped, visibly recalculating. "I'm the man who knows where all the bodies are buried because I buried half of them." Cass pulled up another file, this one showing communication logs between Morse and 3 separate criminal syndicates. Option 1, you let us walk. Report us dead. Close the file. Everyone continues breathing. Option 2, there is no option 2 that ends well for you. The silence that followed had weight, like the moment between lightning and thunder. Morse's jaw worked as if chewing something bitter. "You've been planning this," he said finally. "I've been prepared for this. There's a difference." Cass stubbed out his cigarette with the precision of someone completing a signature. "I didn't want to use this leverage, Director, but you came after someone under my protection. The terrorist, the woman who saved my life when I was 15 and dying." The words came out flat, factual. Not because I was useful or important, but because she could. Do you understand what that means to someone who's been taught that every action needs to serve a purpose? Morse's face cycled through several expressions before settling on resignation. "If we let you walk, you disappear. Completely. No contact, no contracts, no existence in any system we monitor." "Already arranged." Cass pulled up another file, documentation for a ghost freighter registered to a company that had never existed. The Swallow 2. Funny how names circle back. "And the girl? The one who can interface with quantum stacks?" "What girl?" Cass's expression gave away nothing. "Don't play games, Revik. I'm not playing anything. I'm establishing parameters." He moved back to the desk, reclaimed his pendant but left the data pad. "That stays with you. Insurance works both ways. You don't come after us. I don't broadcast your sins. Simple mathematics." Morse stared at the data pad like it might explode, which in a way it could. "The board will want explanations. Tell them I died. Tell them I went rogue. Tell them I fell in love." Cass shrugged. "Tell them whatever story lets you sleep. Just make sure it ends with us never existing in your world again. And if the girl becomes a threat, she's 9 years old. She won't always be." Cass leaned forward and for the first time since entering, allowed his real face to show, not the operative's mask but the man underneath. "Director, I've been the Bureau's ending for 25 years. I've closed cases, closed mouths, closed possibilities. But that woman in cell 3, she taught me about commas, about what comes after the pause, about continuation. Poetic, but poetry doesn't run governments, but it's the only thing that survives them." Cass straightened, becoming the operative again. "Release her, now." Akita emerged from cell 3 looking like she'd been arguing with the walls and winning. Her hair stood at sharp angles, her clothes, The rough prisoner's jumpsuit they'd forced on her were torn at the shoulders, and her green skin flickered with bioluminescent anger that made her look like a war goddess. "Took you long enough," she said, then noticed his expression. "What did it cost?" "Nothing I wasn't ready to pay." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "The others?" "Waiting at extraction point 7. He handed her a coat, not his this time, but one that would fit her properly. "There's someone who wants to meet me, apparently." They moved through Ravelport's back ways, avoiding main thoroughfares where bureau eyes might linger despite the deal. The path led down, always down, into the Undervein's deepest sections where even desperate people rarely went. "You should know," Akita said as they descended a rusted ladder. "She's not what you expect." "I don't expect anything." Liar. But she smiled when she said it. The safe room was behind 3 false walls and 2 deadfalls, the kind of paranoid architecture that kept people alive in hostile territory. Inside, a single lamp cast warm light on bare metal walls and a girl who looked nothing like what Cass had imagined. Treya was small for 9, with the characteristic green skin of a Verdant but shot through with veins of silver. Circuitry, Cass realized. Not implanted, but grown. She looked up from a breakdown of what appeared to be Bureau communication protocols displayed on a screen only she could see, her eyes cycling through data streams like most children cycled through colors. "You're the one who chose mine over theirs," she said simply. Her voice carried an odd resonance, as if speaking on multiple frequencies simultaneously. "Mom told me about you." The word hit Cass like a physical blow. He looked at Akita, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Not biological," she said quickly. "I found her 3 years ago in a Tyrian lab. They were trying to build the perfect interface between human consciousness and quantum systems. They succeeded, but not how they expected." "They made me to be a tool," Treya said, still watching Cass with those ancient eyes. "Mom made me a person." "She's good at that," Cass said softly. Treya tilted her head, and for a moment her eyes went completely silver, accessing something, reading data streams invisible to normal sight. "You're carrying 17 trackers, 3 of them biological. Want me to burn them out?" "Please." She didn't move, didn't touch him, but suddenly Cass felt heat in very specific spots: wrist, shoulder, base of skull. The subcutaneous trackers the Bureau installed in all senior operatives, dying with tiny electronic screams. "There," Treya said, eyes returning to normal green. "You're nobody now." "I've been nobody before. It's not as bad as advertised." The Swallow 2 sat in a private dock that technically didn't exist, registered to a company that had never filed papers, paid for with credits that had no source, maintained by people who forgot faces professionally. She was smaller than military craft but faster, built for running rather than fighting, with a quantum drive that could punch holes between sectors if you knew the right songs to sing to it. "She's beautiful," Akita said, running her hand along the hull. "She's functional." But Cass's voice carried pride. "I've been building her for 10 years, piece by piece, always ready for the day I needed to disappear." "And you never did?" "Never had a reason to." He opened the main hatch, gestured them inside. "Now I have 2. The interior was sparse but clean. 1 main cabin that served as everything, 2 smaller sleeping quarters, a cargo hold that could be converted to living space. Everything essential, nothing wasted. Treya immediately found the navigation console and her consciousness dove into it, silver veins pulsing as she explored the ship's systems. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, you built her yourself. Every circuit, every connection. She's not assembled, she's composed." "Like I said," Akita murmured, watching Cass with something new in her expression. "Artist's hands." They launched without ceremony, without clearance, without anyone noticing 3 people who no longer existed, leaving a port that barely existed itself. The Swallow 2 rose through atmosphere like her namesake, graceful and certain, heading for stars that didn't care about anyone's past. They were 3 days out, running dark between shipping lanes, when Akita found Cass in the cargo hold. He'd set up a small workshop, tools laid out with surgical precision, parts of something half-assembled on the workbench. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Haven't tried." He didn't look up from his work, hands moving with the same certainty they'd once used for killing, now building something delicate and complex. 25 years of bureau conditioning. Sleep is vulnerability. Vulnerability is death. You're not bureau anymore. No, but I'm not anything else yet either. He set down his tools, finally meeting her eyes. That boy you saved, he was running from recruiters, the bureau. They'd killed his parents for refusing to sell him, made it look like a dock accident. Akita moved closer, close enough to see the fine scars on his hands from years of violence. "I didn't know." "How could you? I never told you. I was so grateful just to be warm and fed that I couldn't risk you sending me away." He picked up the copper swallow, which he'd removed from its cord and was incorporating into whatever he was building. "Every meal you gave me, every navigation lesson, every time you laughed at my terrible attempts to seem dangerous, I stored them all, like evidence of a different possible world. And then I tied that pendant around your neck and sent you right back to them. You gave me a reason to survive them." He turned the swallow, and she could see he'd been inscribing something on its wings. Star charts, she realized. The path from where they'd met to where they were now. Every cold decision, every brutal order, every time they tried to turn me into nothing but an ending, I held this and remembered that someone believed I was worth saving. She touched his hand, stilling its movement. "That boy is dead. Had to be, for the man to survive." He turned his hand, interlacing their fingers. "But maybe that's not an ending. Maybe it's just a comma." "Speaking of commas," she said, and kissed him. It was different from their desperate kiss in the tunnels, different from the fear-tinged connection in the safe house. This was deliberate, chosen, tasting of possibilities rather than necessities. When they broke apart, both were breathing differently. "Treya," Akita said carefully, "won't have any issue with this." "Good to know." He pulled her closer and for the first time in 25 years allowed himself to want something that wasn't about survival. "But right now, I don't want to think about anyone else's opinion." "Just mine?" "Just yours." They made love in the cargo hold on a makeshift bed of shipping blankets, with stars visible through the porthole and the ship humming around them like a contentment made mechanical. It was nothing like the Bureau's clinical approach to physical needs. This was messy, uncertain, full of laughter when they knocked over the tools and cursing when the deck plating proved too cold. It was human in all the ways his life hadn't been for decades. Afterward, lying tangled together while their breathing synchronized, Akita traced the scars across his chest, a map of violence that told the story of who he'd been. "So what now?" she asked. "You've burned your entire life for us." He reached for his jacket, pulled out a cigarette, then looked at it and laughed. Wrong pronoun. Instead of lighting it, he broke it in half, letting the tobacco scatter. "I burned their life. Mine is just starting." She took the broken cigarette from his hand, examined it like an artifact. "No more smoking? No more endings, only commas and what comes after. That's either very poetic or very pretentious." "Both. I'm trying on different personalities, seeing what fits." She laughed, and the sound filled the cargo hold like music. "Well, let me know when you find one you like." "I already have." He pulled her closer, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "It's the one where I'm not alone." The storyteller finished her tale and set down her empty glass with the precision of someone who'd been trained to make every movement count. "And that," she said to Cider, who hadn't moved in the last 10 minutes, "is how Cass Revick and Akita Nave disappeared from the universe's official record. Dead on paper, alive in the stars." Cider's hand, which had been creeping toward her thigh under the table for the past hour, finally made contact. His grin was the kind that had probably worked in whatever cesspool he'd crawled out of. "Nice story, sweetheart. But you're what, 25? You weren't even born yet. How would you know?" The glass moved faster than thought. One moment it was whole. The next it was artistic fragments decorating Cider's skull. He dropped like a sack of poor decisions, blood mixing with spilled Kryptonian ale on the bar's ancient floor. "For the record," the storyteller announced to the suddenly silent bar, standing with a fluid grace that spoke of years of training, "I know because Treya tells me stories. My older sister has a perfect memory, comes with being able to interface with quantum stacks." She pulled back her jacket, revealing the twin plasma swords at her hips, their hilts worn smooth from use. The weapons hummed softly, recognizing their owner's touch. "My name is Sanra Nave Revick, daughter of the man who taught the universe that last word doesn't always mean final order. Daughter of the woman who proved that salvation can echo across decades, and sister to the girl who can read the universe's code like most people read faces." The bar's silence deepened. Someone whispered, "The twin blade phantom," and someone else whispered back, "Shut up, she'll hear you." Because everyone from here to the frontier sectors knew that name, the woman who'd killed 17 Tyrian war criminals in a single night, who'd walked out of the Bureau's maximum security detention center like it was a social club, who moved through the universe like her father's ghost and her mother's fury combined. Sanra dropped credits on the bar, enough to cover the glass, the cleaning, and the therapeutic forgetting everyone was about to do. "Oh, and cider. Next time you want to put your hands on someone, remember this. I learned precision from my father, but I learned where to cut from my mother. And Big Sister Treya? She taught me how to make sure people stay disappeared." She walked toward the door, her footsteps falling into a rhythm that echoed through the bar, 3 short, 1 long. The pattern Cass had used to confuse the Corvid drones. The pattern that had become their family's signature, a Morse code that spelled revolution in the language of simply continuing to exist. At the door, she paused. "They're still out there, you know, all 3 of them. The Swallow 2 jumps between sectors, showing up wherever the Bureau gets too comfortable, wherever someone needs a comma instead of a period." She smiled, and it was her father's precision mixed with her mother's wild joy. "Maybe you'll see them someday. Maybe you already have and didn't know it. Ghost ships are funny that way." Then she was gone, leaving only the whispers that followed. That was her, the real Sanra Nave Revick. "I heard she killed a bureau director with his own pen. I heard she can fight in complete darkness because her mother taught her to see with her skin. I heard she's looking for something, or someone. I heard the Bureau pretends she doesn't exist, because admitting she does means admitting they failed." Outside, Sanra touched the comm unit in her ear. "Story delivered, Treya. They bought it." Her sister's voice came back, tinged with that quantum resonance that made normal people nervous. "Good. Dad's last message said they need the rumors spreading. Something big is coming." "When isn't it?" Sanra drew one sword, checking its charge in the neon light of the port signs. "Where to next?" "Sector 7. Mom's got a lead on some Bureau black sites that need exposing." "And Dad?" "Being Dad. Probably standing somewhere smoking and pretending he's quit while planning 17 moves ahead." Sanra laughed, her mother's laugh, the one that had made a broken boy believe in the possibility of being whole. "Tell them I'm coming. Tell them the comma continues." She vanished into the port's maze of streets, another ghost in a universe full of them. But unlike most ghosts, she was very much alive, very much armed, and very much her parents' daughter. The Bureau had thought they'd ended the story of Cass Revick and Akita Nave. They'd forgotten the first rule of grammar. A comma means there's more coming, and Sanra Nave Revik was just getting started. Behind her, the bar slowly returned to its normal hum, but quieter now, more respectful. Because everyone knew they'd just been part of something larger, a story that had started with "shut up and listen," and ended with them all listening very, very carefully. The legend would spread by morning. By week's end, 3 sectors would know that Sanra Nav Revik had been there, had told the story, had walked away leaving only broken glass and revolution in her wake. And somewhere in the dark between stars, aboard a ship named for resilience, 3 people who didn't exist anymore smiled and plotted their next move in the long sentence of resistance that refused to end. The story continued. It always had. It always would.